The purpose of this video is to explore the export menu. And the first item that we'll look at is the multiple methods. Select it and you see this window. On the left is a list of the methods, and on the right side are 4 buttons to export the data from the chosen methods to various text files for various purposes. Along the top are tools to help in the selection of the methods. In ArchiveMethod, when the code for a single method is visible, there will generally be a button to export the content of that code to the root folder that has been set up in the user preferences. Here's an example of that. But there are times that you want to export more than the text of a single method, and this first button on the top right allows you to do just that. We could select every method from every database, but we'll be a little more selective. That would be 2,718 methods. What we're going to do is look at some project methods that start with the word array and select them. We can see the number of the selected files is 32, and we're going to create text files for all of those 32 methods. Click on this top button and a dialog box comes up explaining the situation. 32 methods have been exported to a time-date stamped folder. We'll go ahead and look at that folder here, and inside it we can see those 32 methods. We can look at any one of them. An alternative is to do that same thing, but click on this checkbox that says One Document, and now we will export a single text file with all of the selected methods contained in it. We can go look for that file. There's a primitive table of contents at the top listing all of those methods. The presence of the tilde allows us to select any given line and use the find function of the text editor to search for that line, and we can see the text of that method. So there are 2 ways to do the basic export: as a single file or as a collection of files in a folder. The next option is to export these methods as colored HTML files. These can be easier to read and appreciate the structure of the exported method. Creating these files can take a little bit of time, so if there are large numbers, you'll see a counter at the top of the screen as the files are created. Once that's complete, we can go ahead and look for that folder, creating all the HTML documents. We can look at any individual one and see that method displayed with various elements of the code in color and with the indentation demonstrated. This third option here, AMCD My Library, we'll review in a separate video. Now finally, this fourth option. It creates a text file as a tool to transfer code from one ArchiveMethod database to another. If you have a friend, for example, that also has an ArchiveMethod database and you want to send him some of your code for his use, this is how you would do it. We'll be sending these selected files that deal with arrays. It creates a JSON text file, which is not very friendly for human reading. it ends up in the addable methods folder, and here is that file with a time date stamp on it and the words transfer archive methods in the name of the file. To actually import this information into an archive method database, we would go to the Add menu and navigate to that file. Now, it doesn't make a lot of sense to be adding this particular file to this database because the methods already exist here, but this is the process. The program is clever enough to realize that these methods are already in place and does not actually do an import back into the same archive method database. But if these files had been given to a friend, he could import those methods into his copy of the archive method database. The next item under the Export menu is Newer Version in Other Database. It's not uncommon for some developers to use project methods across several databases that are under development. If we choose the database obit fresh HR, we can see that there are several methods here that exist in this database, but which have a version with a modification date that is later in some other database. We can go ahead and look at any one of those methods and see the versions in the two databases to get a handle of the degree of similarity between the two and help decide whether we might want to update the version of this particular method in the obit fresh HR database. To do that, we can select any one or perhaps all of those methods and export them into a folder. We could go ahead and open that folder. We could open up the obit fresh HR database and decide whether we wanted to copy over any of these particular methods to update the version that exists in that database. The third menu item is methods unique to database. This displays methods, as the title suggests, that exist in a particular database that does not exist in any other database. Under circumstances that might be rare for any given developer, this can be useful. We'll look at only the project methods, and we can see that the obit fresh HR database has several methods that occur in no other database. This can be occasionally helpful. Perhaps you are refactoring and updating a database such as the obit fresh HR database, and there is an old database called obit HR on which it is based. Here we get a quick listing of all of the methods that occur in the old version that have not yet been brought across into the new version. You can go ahead and export any or all of these methods and put them in a folder for review and possible incorporation into the new database. The fourth menu item is Snapshot. This brings up a window that allows you to create a text file that contains all of the code in the database as it exists in the particular point in time. Here we can select the Fox Island Cemetery database. By default, it is a snapshot at the current time. You can, in fact, change this to get a snapshot of that code in that database at some other time, possibly if you wanted to compare the state of the code sometime in the past to the current state of the code using some diff tool. Click on the button to create the snapshot, and you will see that you've created a fairly large text file which contains all of the code from that particular database at that particular point in time. The final selection is Git, and this is a tool which helps developers who are using and are familiar with the Git versioning system to export the current state of the database as a folder of text files so it can be incorporated into a Git archive. Before we conclude, I'd like to demonstrate quickly the help function that is built into the ArchiveMethod database. Frequently in a window, you will see a button like this with an orange question mark. Click on it, and a help window will appear with information about how to use the tools in the window that you are currently looking at.